Hola, mi nombre es Bella Constanza y yo hice mi investigación sobre el tema de los efectos del color de piel en las Américas. Y antes de continuar quisiera hacer una introducción de la investigación que hice sobre este tema. In the Americas, people are always saying I am colorblind. When this saying is heard, one is referring to the color of a person's skin. Yet, this should not be a phrase used as common as it is. With this phrase, uniqueness is taken away from a person. With this phrase, a person's ethnicity is now something they are ashamed of. It is time to realize that skin color, wherever a person is living, is always taken into consideration. No matter how colorblind an employer is, if a person's skin color is identified as black, if that employer sees that the person is black, and this goes for anyone, someone on the street who sees a person with a darker skin color, what usually happens is a bias is set. What is observed is that Latinos would much rather be considered as blancos rather than labeled as mestizos, mulattos, or morenitos. Ultimately, skin color most certainly determines a person's socioeconomic status, what job that person will obtain, how people perceive them, how they view themselves, as well as how successful they will be. Entonces, colorismo forma una parte de enfoque en esta investigación. Colorismo es un tipo de discriminación. Mucha gente a veces confunde colorismo con racismo, pero son términos muy diferentes. No quiero decir que no tienen nada en común, porque sí lo tienen, pero son dos diferentes palabras. Como cuando la gente dice, sí, yo soy racista con los hispanos, con los latinos, y siendo latinos ellos mismos, usan la palabra racista, pero en realidad es el colorismo que estamos viendo en ese mismo instante. Y este término colorismo fue creado por Alice Walker, una mujer, una señora que hizo estudios sobre este tema del colorismo. Ella quería ver los impactos del color de piel de cada persona en las Américas. Y entonces ella puso un énfasis en que el colorismo no es algo que apenas se va realizando, sino que es un problema, porque sí es un problema que se ha creado hace décadas. Entonces ya tiene tiempo el colorismo de existir. Lo único es que apenas estamos viendo y apenas la gente está hablando sobre sus experiencias. Por eso es que no es muy común la palabra colorismo. Y el colorismo verdaderamente afecta a las comunidades latinas. Y es triste, pero es una triste realidad. Pero todo esto fue a causa de la colonización que los europeos hicieron en los años antes con las Américas, porque vimos, what we saw was Europeans coming over to the Americas, so in Brazil, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Honduras. So they were there and they were basically having children with the African Americans who were in those places at that time. So from there we see children who are biracial, children who are mixed, which is a term that is commonly used when Latinos refer to colorism. So that's just a little backstory of what colorism is. There's a lot more to go with it, with the history, and that's really important with this topic. And honestly, it's taken an impact to many people today. And we will go further on about the experiences that those people have lived through. So, discriminación. Este tipo de discriminación es mayormente aplicada dentro de la misma comunidad morena. Como expliqué más antes, el colorismo, en vez de decir que el colorismo está, o sea, en acción, lo que la gente dice, soy racista con mi misma gente, o sea, soy racista con la gente que tienen la piel más oscura que la mía. Y entonces en Latinoamérica muchas personas prefieren a la gente de piel clara. Y con esta preferencia es lo que causa a muchos afrolatinos decir, y entonces, mi valor, ¿qué es aquí? Hasta rechazan el término, así yo soy morena, así yo soy moreno. Mucha gente, aunque no es una palabra formal, dicen, así yo no soy negra, y ni yo no soy negro. Y eso es algo que quiero explicar un poquito más. So, what is often seen in Latin American countries like Brazil, Cuba, Colombia, and La República Dominicana is that Afro-Latinos do not identify themselves as Black. Afro-Latinos are quick to reject this label. With that being said, in Brazil there are 134 categories of Blackness, says Gates in his documentary. Black in Latin America. To illustrate, when asking a person in Brazil if they are Black, they say, I am not Black, I am moreno. Or, I am not Black, I am cabolo. Moreno and cabolo are only 2 of the 100 words Afro-Latinos use to describe themselves, but they never use the term Black. Even though this is true in Latin America, these people were in the United States. If these people were in the United States, many people would see them and automatically see a Black man or woman. The main reason why, as told by Gates, is the history of a Black person in Latin America. It is known that when the United States started the slave trade, Latin America did not fall behind. Many parts of Latin America started receiving many slaves, and people did not like to see this aspect of their history. To compare, in the United States, a Black person is proud to be identified as such, and one similarity is that Haiti also holds on to that pride. But this one country has not been able to change the mind of their neighbors, the Dominicans. The color of an individual's skin takes a huge toll on the person's identity. So it is very obvious that a lot of people really did try to convert these countries, not convert religiously, if anything, convert in the sense of being more white, leaning towards more that white color of skin. And that is where we see discrimination, because people say, oh yes, white is a perfect color. You need to be white in order to be accepted. And that's not true. And that is where discrimination comes into place, and it is such a sad fact. So with that, we need to speak about the experiences and Afro-Latino, what they live through day by day, what obstacles, what challenges they face in the United States and in other Latin American countries. As described by Yuli Marshall, it can be frustrating. They go through an identity crisis. They face exclusion day by day. But ultimately, that all comes down to that person realizing that they need to love the skin they're in. So that all comes down to self-love. And I would like to go into detail with Yuli's testimony because it is a very good one. So to go further into the topic of how Afro-descendants are treated in the Americas, it is necessary to read about their encounters in certain areas. For example, Yuli Marshall says that being Afro-Latina can be frustrating. She uses that term frustrating because a vast amount of people assume she is African American or part of the Black community. And she's not ashamed of saying, oh yes, I am Black. If anything, it's all part of who she truly is. She is a Latina. And she is proud of that fact that she wants everyone else to know. Moving on, since many people make the assumption that she is Black, they are shocked of how fluent she is in Spanish. When these people realize she is Latina, they are shocked and even still skeptical, which is bizarre. Marshall then proceeds to state that these assumptions are the reason why many people have a hard time identifying themselves. This happened in the United States. Another personal encounter Marshall had with discrimination was when she dated a light-skinned Latino. Her dark skin became the reason why the relationship ended. The light-skinned Latino's parents convinced him to break it off so he could marry, and I quote, a white girl para adelantar la raza. In other words, the parents of this young man wanted to keep the whiteness in their family, so mixing would not be acceptable to them. This hurt Marshall, but she has dealt with this kind of exclusion before. She goes on to state that a lot of her coworkers say that she has no idea what a Black person faces in the United States, but half of the time people assume she is Black. So ultimately, she faces the same things. So that's why it is really hard for her to identify as Black, because Black people say, oh, you're not Black enough because you haven't experienced this. And Latinos say you're not Latina because you're Black. So it's very hard to fit in. As sad as this is, situations like this happen in the United States and in other Latin American countries. Overall, Marshall is proud of who she is and will never deny her true roots. And that all comes down to self-love. And that's what we should be preaching. We shouldn't be preaching, oh, your skin color is this, so you should be like this. Oh, your skin color is this, so you're obviously this. We should be preaching self-love and acceptance. I also want to note that there is a huge lack of representation in the media, and Ilia Calderon is a perfect example. Because she is, as far as when I was growing up, she was the only Afro-Latina that I would see on TV. But she has crossed those barriers, and she is now setting a great example. So, the media time and time again fails to represent the diverse communities in the United States as well as in other countries. So Ilia's testimony is perfect. To go further into detail, Ilia Calderon, news anchor for Noticiero Univision, has faced many challenges to get where she currently is. Calderon came to the United States with the aspiration of pursuing a career in journalism. She identifies as an Afro-Latina. And with that sense of pride, many people tried bringing her down. Calderon first encountered colorism and racism in Chogo, Colombia, by a fellow peer. This student looked like she was of European descent, and she looked at Calderon with disgust, saying that she should be embarrassed of the color of her skin. The interaction Calderon had with her fellow classmate impacted her. Calderon now felt the need to succeed. Even though she faced this kind of discrimination in Colombia and in the United States, she is now representing Afro-Latinos in the media. It is necessary for people like Calderon to take over the media so girls and boys who identify with her skin color can understand that their skin color is empowering and that they can do great things. All in all, Ilia Calderon is using her voice to bring equality and change to the United States, to society, and Latin America society too. And she speaks about colorism all the time. So if you do have time, go ahead and look at her testimony. It's amazing. So, ¿qué podemos hacer para hacer una diferencia? So, primero podemos desatar todo estereotipo, podemos educarnos, participar en festivales afrolatinos, platicar con una persona afrolatina para entender su experiencia, and see the beauty of their culture, of course. So overall, colorism is very obvious and evident, but we need to make the difference.